welcome to the Q&A for the film Prism, which is being presented in the 59th New York Film Festival in the Currents section. I'm Aily Nash, and I'm one of the programmers of the section, and I'm very pleased to have with me the three filmmakers who've collaborated on this work, as well as Nicholas Elliott, who will be translating for us. So firstly, I'd love to welcome the three filmmakers, An van Dienderen, Rosine Mbakam, as well as Eléonore Yameogo. Hello and welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
So to begin, I thought we could start with An, as my understanding is this was a proposal that came from you, and curious to hear about your initial idea to create a collaborative film around these ideas. And I'm aware that your previous film, Lily, also dealt with many of these questions, but how for you did you decide on inviting Rosine and Eléonore specifically to create this work all together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was now, I think, 4 years ago. So it's been a while since we started collaborating. And I think the desire was to have some kind of response on the issue of China girls and the sort of racism that it creates in technology, and how people of color deal with this racism, as my film was sort of a white film, as from a perspective of a white person making the film, but I wanted to really have the perspective of people of color on this issue of film directors of color. And I was very much interested in the work, the oeuvre of Rosine and Eléonore, and that's why I think we started to collaborate.
And I'm sorry, I realized, Nicholas, I forgot to give you a space to translate my initial question. So,
well, since it was a question addressed strictly to An, I thought that was okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
for
I was just going to add to that as well, that I wanted to hear from Eléonore and Rosine as well, in terms of your initial response to Anne's invitation, and where you were coming from in your own practices in relation to some of these questions.
Donc, la question que Aily a posée au début à Anne, c'est comment est-ce que l'idée de ce film lui est venue, et surtout comment est-ce qu'elle a décidé d'en faire une œuvre collaborative, de travailler sur ses idées de manière collaborative, vu qu'elle avait déjà fait un film elle-même, Lily, qui parlait de certaines de ces thématiques. Et donc, comment a-t-elle décidé de s'adresser à vous, Rosine et Eléonore? Puis, Aily vous a demandé d'aller un peu plus loin avec cette question, de savoir quelle était votre réponse initiale à cette proposition d'Anne, à cette invitation d'Anne, et comment est-ce que ces idées que travaillait Anne étaient présentes dans votre propre pratique du cinéma?
Donc, personnellement, quand Anne a eu l'idée de m'inviter sur le projet, j'ai beaucoup hésité avant de m'engager, parce que c'est un sujet qui ne me questionnait pas au quotidien dans mon travail. J'avais déjà fait le constat que quand on filme la peau noire auprès d'une peau blanche, elle ne paraissait pas totalement d'origine. Mais le questionnement ne partait pas si loin que ça. Et j'ai mis du temps à dire oui à Anne, parce que je ne savais pas qu'est-ce que j'allais pouvoir raconter sur le sujet.
Personally, when An approached me with this idea and invited me, I hesitated quite a long time before I said yes, because this is a subject that was not present in a daily way for me in my own film work. I had already observed that when you film black skin with film that is really made for white skin, you see that there's something off, that it's not originally planned for that. But my thinking about this, my questions about this had not gone further than that in my work. So it took me a long time to say yes to An.
And to Rosine?
For me, when Anne asked me to collaborate in the project of Prism, my hesitation was not in the subject, because I usually question that inequality in my work, and my hesitation was I used to work alone. I used to film people, I used to do my film alone, and in that project I have to work with two people, and my hesitation was how would I going to work with three people different, like different to me. And but I saw the proposition of Anne in the way that it was an opportunity for me to say what I cannot write on the project and submit it in the commission. It was so personal that I cannot write it in and give it to white commission here to judge as a project that it's good or not good. And I accept the project for that, because it was an opportunity for me to say what I wanted to say on that subject.
Mm-hmm. And this is the question for any or all of you. Wondered if you could speak to the choice to forefront the process of collaboration and production into this work. We see throughout the film these conversations on Zoom of the three of you kind of discussing, you know, where shall we begin the film? Shall we edit parts of An's film, you know, into the rest of the film? Like we're hearing the film in the making as we're watching, and I wondered if you could speak to that.
Alors, c'est une question pour chacune de vous, si vous voulez. Aily vous invite à parler du choix de mettre en avant dans le film le processus de collaboration, le processus de production de ce travail. C'est-à-dire que tout au long du film, on voit des conversations entre vous trois sur Zoom en train de discuter, par exemple, où commencer, ou s'il faudrait mettre des parties du film de Anne à l'intérieur de ce nouveau film. Et donc, d'une certaine manière, on entend le film en train de se faire à l'intérieur du film. Et donc, elle vous invite à discuter de ce choix.
Actually, I just want to also add one thing as well, is also the conscious choice to kind of reveal the cinematic apparatus. I think in both An and Rosine's sequences, we're seeing very much like the sets and the backdrops, and you know, of course, the film is about revealing the what's behind the technical. So also this choice in the individual works as well.
Donc, Aily vous invite aussi à parler de ce choix conscient de révéler l'appareil du cinéma. C'est-à-dire, par exemple, dans les films de Anne et Rosine, on voit les décors, les studios. Le film révèle ce qui se passe derrière la technique, dans les coulisses. Donc, elle vous invite à parler aussi de ce choix.
For me, the choice of showing background was not to just showing background. It was just to say that it's the question is not about the cinema, it's beyond the cinema. It's about the ideology behind the cinema. And it's why I wanted to show that there is nothing in the cinema for me. The problem of the camera we can have, if we have a good light on the black skin, we can have a good result. But what we have to question is the ideology behind that choice of making a camera that film only a white skin. And showing the background for me was to deconstruct how we film a black skin. We can film a black skin, but what we cannot change as a filmmaker, my problem today is how I confront my way of making cinema with that ideology that discriminate.
Donc, je dirais que ce film s'est construit vraiment petit à petit parce qu'au début, quand on a commencé, on ne savait pas exactement le résultat que ça allait donner parce que nous sommes trois personnalités différentes. Et avant de faire ce film, Rosine, je ne la connaissais pas. Anne, je l'ai découvert aussi quand elle m'a contactée pour le film. Donc, trois personnalités différentes, trois univers différents. Et on avait des points de vue différents aussi sur la thématique. Et ensemble, il fallait qu'on arrive à créer une œuvre en fait qui tienne la route. Donc, c'était le défi sur ce film. Et je pense que malgré les divergences que vous avez pu voir, on a pu relever ce défi-là. Et j'ai choisi dans ma partition de suivre une comédienne parce que je pense que ce sont les premières victimes en fait. Moi, je suis réalisatrice, je suis confrontée à un problème technique, mais la comédienne qui est filmée au quotidien et qui voit son image rendue à l'écran, comment elle le vit. Donc, c'est cette comédienne, Tela Poumaou, qui va à la rencontre d'autres réalisateurs pour comprendre comment est rendue son image à l'écran.
J'arrive. Pouvez-vous me dire le nom de votre actrice, s'il vous plaît?
Tela Poumaou.
Tela Kouraou?
Poumaou.
Poumaou.
Oui, Poumaou.
So this film is really a film that built itself little by little. When we started, we really didn't know what kind of result we would get to because the three of us are three different personalities. And as for myself, I didn't know Rosine before we got involved in the project. Similarly, I only met An when she contacted me for this project. So we're dealing with three different personalities who have three different worlds and three very different points of view on the themes addressed. So the challenge here was to make one piece of work that would hold together, that would cohere. And I hope that when people see the film, they see that despite our divergences, it does come together. Now, as for my part, I chose to work with an actress because I consider that actresses are the first victims of this technical problem. I'm a director, I'm behind the camera, but actresses are the ones who are directly affected with how they look on the screen. So I worked with the actress Tela Poumaou, and in my part, she goes to meet different directors to talk about how her image is affected by this technical issue.
I think I can really comply with what Rosine and Eléonore are saying. I just want to add that I think that including the Skype conversations was also a way of not only showing that we have, you know, that the film is in the making, that we didn't have a plan beforehand, that was a research that the three of us were set out to do. So it is, in that sense, also a documentary of our film process that we wanted to record and that we wanted to integrate in the film. And in that sense, I also believe that integrating part of the process of the film is also a political gesture of politicizing film, and including, yes, questions of how to raise issues of the what is the construction of a documentary, what is, you know, behind the camera. As Rosine was saying, it's important to show that it's made, that it's in English you say man-made, but I also think it's woman-made. So it's a, you know, a process of making. So this making has to be in the film to show that it has a political power.
Yeah, can you also speak to the choice to then have each of you direct your own sequences within the film? And I'm curious to know how much that was collaborative, if the other two people had input or were part of the production of your individual sequences. Yeah, maybe just start there.
Pourriez-vous parler du choix de chacune faire votre propre séquence dans le film? Et par exemple, j'aimerais savoir si les films individuels avaient quand même un aspect collaboratif. Est-ce que les deux autres avaient sur le film ou la séquence de l'une un regard ou avaient des choses à dire, ou est-ce qu'elles ont même participé à la production?
Maybe I should start, because the project started with me having an idea of making a cadavre exquis, and I forgot the term in English.
Exquisite corpse.
Yes. So I thought, you know, I want to make a piece, and then I give it to Rosine or Eléonore, and then she makes a continuation. So it was a sort of a surrealistic format. So I had made my first part, and then I invited Rosine and Eléonore to take a look at it. But when we were together, it was pointed out to me, and rightly so, that me making the first move was again a white person putting up front the rules of the game, so to speak. So at that moment, we decided to forget about cadavre exquis. But of course, my images were already made. So there was kind of a hiccup in the project, and I think I learned a lot about my own privileged way of looking at and looking at filmmaking, I think. So at that point, it was a completely open situation where, and then maybe this is also a good moment that Rosine and Eléonore come in with their experience of the process.
I think that the subject imposed that we have to speak for our experience, and for me it was clear that it cannot be Anne or Eléonore cannot tell me what I have to say in that project. For me it was clear because it was so personal for me when I was thinking about the way that I want to question that subject, that it was difficult for me that Eléonore or Anne can tell me you have to do this like this or not. For me it was clear, and it was difficult for me to make Anne or Eléonore understand that sometimes it was we have also our way to enter on the project, and it was different. But for me, I was that point of making my part alone to tell what I want to say was clear for me, and I wanted to do it like that. But maybe because it was so personal, that it was difficult for me to share the idea of making that personal idea with someone else, even if it is a collaborative film. I know that it's a little bit absurd, but But the subject for me imposed that.
Donc, pour rebondir à ce qu'elles ont dit, j'ai vécu le tournage de ce film de façon individuelle parce que j'avais toute la liberté de donner mon point de vue sur le sujet. Mais avant le tournage, on a pu discuter sur le scénario que chacune de nous avait écrit. Et puis, on a eu des retours des unes et des autres. Et à partir de ce moment-là, on était libre d'apporter notre regard sur le sujet. Mais c'est au montage, en fait, que j'ai vu une forme de collaboration parce qu'on avait la possibilité de poser notre regard sur l'image de l'autre et puis avoir un retour. En fonction de ça, on en fait ce qu'on veut. Si on décide de transformer l'image, de corriger la partie que nos collègues ont moins appréciée ou de la garder comme ça. Donc, sur cette phase du film, moi, j'ai senti de la collaboration et c'était important pour moi parce que ce film, je le voyais collaboratif.
To react to what my colleagues said, I experienced the shoot of my film in a very individual way because I had full freedom to give my point of view about what I was doing, on what I was doing, and shooting. Before the shoot, however, we had the opportunity to comment on each other's screenplays. But where I really saw the collaborative aspect come in was during the editing phase, because we saw each other's images and we were free to give each other feedback. Now, then we could decide, each of us, whether or not we wanted to respond to that feedback, to do what our colleagues suggested or not. But in that phase, I really felt that we achieved something collaborative, which was very important to me because I saw this film as a collaborative project.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear a bit more from each of you about the ideas behind your specific sequences. And particularly, I was curious with An and Rosine, you know, it's very notable that both of your pieces, the context is this educational institution, be it the art school or the film school, and, you know, as kind of maybe the site of where these ideologies are passed to future filmmakers. And so, yeah, curious maybe to hear comments on that, but also just in general, more specifically on each of your portions.
J'aimerais vous entendre chacune parler de manière plus précise sur les idées qui ont guidé vos séquences individuelles. Particulièrement, j'aimerais entendre Anne et Rosine sur le fait que leurs deux séquences ont pour contexte des institutions d'éducation, des écoles, peut-être en tant que site où cette idéologie sera passée à de futurs cinéastes. Mais en général, je serais heureuse de vous entendre chacune parler de manière plus précise de votre séquence.
Maybe Anne, you can start, or Eléonore.
Donc, moi, le choix de mon personnage et puis le style de tournage est parti du fait. J'ai tourné autour de la scène à Paris. Et la scène, pour moi, représente le début de l'histoire du cinéma d'Afrique. Sur un film qui s'appelle Afrique sur scène, qui est réalisé par un réalisateur sénégalais à l'époque qui vivait à Paris. Donc, c'était un symbole fort pour moi de tourner autour de cette scène et de mettre la comédienne avec ses invités en interview au bord de la scène. C'était une façon d'interroger ce premier film-là et d'introduire aussi ce premier film africain qui mettait déjà en image une personne de peau noire filmée à côté d'une personne de peau blanche. Donc, c'est le premier film africain où on voyait vraiment ce problème-là. Donc, dans le film, vous avez pu voir un monsieur qui est même le réalisateur, avec une dame de peau blanche derrière la mobilette. Donc, la problématique se posait déjà dès le premier film africain. Donc, c'était important pour moi de tourner au bord de la scène. Et aussi, la comédienne, elle fait une sorte de procès à la caméra. Donc, l'idée m'est venue, c'est vraiment la dernière séquence, la dernière inspiration que j'ai eue à la fin du tournage. Je me suis dit, bon, quand je regarde les scènes de Rosine, les scènes de Anne, c'est comme si toutes les deux accusaient la caméra, et la caméra, pour moi, représente l'Occident. Donc, j'ai fait une mise en scène où Théla, en tant que comédienne, questionne la caméra sur les inégalités liées à sa peau. Donc, c'est ce que vous avez pu voir dans le film. Et aussi, j'avais aussi envie d'introduire des images de l'Afrique parce qu'on parle de la peau noire, donc c'était pour moi important de filmer en Afrique avec la lumière naturelle du jour pour voir ce que donne cette lumière du jour filmée avec une caméra moderne aujourd'hui, parce qu'à l'époque, c'était de la pellicule, donc c'était un autre problème. Et aujourd'hui, avec le numérique, quel est le rendu avec la lumière naturelle? Donc, c'est pour ça que vous avez vu aussi des scènes filmées en Afrique avec une voix off de la comédienne qui se présente comme l'Afrique avec toutes ses forces et ses valeurs.
The choice for my film of the character and the style of shooting that I adopted started with the fact that I'm filming around the Seine in Paris. And for me, the Seine represents the beginning of the history of African cinema through a film called Afrique sur Seine that was the first African film, first African documentary film made by a filmmaker from Senegal in Paris on the Seine. So for me, that's a really strong symbol to film my actress talking to filmmakers by the Seine today. It was a way for me of investigating this earlier film, Afrique sur Seine, in which you see the problem, the question that we're investigating now is already present, because in that earlier film, you see a Black man with a white woman on a moped. So you have that contrast of the Black skin and the white skin. You have that question right there in that first film. So that was very important for me. Also, in my sequence, I have the actress put the camera on trial. That was the last thing I filmed. I saw that in Rosine and Anne's sequences, for instance, they were really putting the camera on trial. So I decided that I should have my actress question the camera about the inequality that exists based around skin color through film. So that's something that you saw in my film, I hope. And lastly, I wanted to introduce through my sequence images of Africa, because it's a film that we're making about Black skin. So I thought it was important to show how Black skin looks today in Africa, in African daylight. I wanted to see what the effect was today filmed with a modern camera, because what we were talking about earlier with Afrique sur Seine, for instance, is celluloid. Now we're using digital. So I wanted to see what that difference was. And over that part, you hear a voiceover from the actress who is presenting herself as Africa with all her strength and all her misfortunes. So that's what you see in my sequence.
And Rosine, I think similarly in your sequence, there is an interest in thinking about the art, like historical images. With yours, we're seeing these more art historical representations, painting, photograph. So I don't, maybe that could be an entry point into speaking to your sequence as well.
I wanted to question, first of all, the different way of making an image we can paint, we can film with a camera and we can photograph. And but I wanted to go in the beginning of making an image, and black image. It was a painting, and it began with a slavery, and I wanted to go there to deconstruct a famous painting, Le Portrait de la Négresse, and to go there. We all know that it's powerful, it's beautiful, but there is something there that make me uncomfortable. I wanted to deconstruct that, not only to deconstruct my feelings, but to bring the public to the beginning of a construction of an ideology of inequality that became systemic now. And I want to go there and to show how I have that heritage as Black in me, and how I can transmit it maybe in my children today. And I wanted to go there to deconstruct that and to show also in my first image of making a film with Marina, the extract of my first film, to question how I have it in me, that heritage of discrimination, of inequality, and also with Raymond Depardon. It's a huge filmmaker, a huge French filmmaker, and to took what we can just learn in the school of cinema or in the school of photography. People today are learning how to, young today are learning how to do an image in those images. And it is an heritage of domination that we are learning, white people are learning in the school, to reproduce that domination, to reproduce that discrimination. And I film in the School of Cinema because I was discriminated in that school. I wanted to question that condescendency, that domination, and to just choose 3 huge images: Le Portrait de la Négresse, Raymond Depardon, and the photograph, and just deconstruct that and find my way of liberation in that deconstruction.
So in my part, I teach at a school where I'm filming, and I filmed it on celluloid also. And the beginning is sort of a Garden of Eden. Is if you see the sort of old buildings and the green grass, and students are happily there, but it's of course a very wide space. And I wanted to integrate in this, insert in this white space, this experience of the actress who is from South Africa, who she shared with me this experience of the pencil test in South Africa, where once civil rights was chosen according to whether the pencil fell out of the hair. So to integrate this story of how the color of skin is conflated with civil rights was to me a way of problematizing this space of school, of education, of the place, especially in West Europe, perhaps also in North America, space which is Eurocentric, and where the tradition of film is always going through the tradition of Eurocentrism. So yes, I wanted to problematize this and criticize this tradition.
Thank you all so much. I think we have to wrap it up here, but I really appreciate all of you sharing your process and thoughts with us. And thank you as well to Nicholas for translating.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I don't say any secret that we're so happy with the film being presented at the New York Film Festival as a world premiere. For us, it's a really a nice tribute to the work that we've done. So thank you so much for doing this and discovering the film with the audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.